Welcome to the Real Crime Diary Daily Dose of Crime. I'm Sean Dupree, and today we're diving into a chilling case that shows just how deadly the pursuit of gang membership can be. In Phoenix, Arizona, one man's desperate attempt to join the Mexican Mafia led to not one, but two brutal murders that shocked the community. What drives someone to commit such heinous acts just to belong? And how did a simple gun deal become the catalyst for the second killing? Stay with me as we unravel this disturbing tale of violence, gang loyalty, and justice. In May 2023, the streets of Phoenix became the backdrop for a series of brutal murders that would expose the dark underbelly of gang violence in Arizona. At the center of this bloody saga was 27-year-old Timothy Moses Bernal, an aspiring gang member whose actions would eventually earn him nearly 5 decades behind bars. The story begins with Chad Munoz, a former Mexican Mafia member who had fallen into what gang members ominously refer to as bad standing with the organization. For those unfamiliar with gang dynamics, being in bad standing essentially marks someone as a target, creating a dangerous situation that often leads to violent consequences. Bernal, eager to prove himself worthy of membership in the notorious Mexican Mafia, saw Munoz as his ticket in. It's a disturbing reality of gang culture that acts of violence are often used as currency for acceptance, and in this case, the price of admission would be measured in blood. What's particularly chilling about this case is how calculated it was. This wasn't a crime of passion or a spontaneous act of violence, but rather a premeditated murder designed to impress one of the most dangerous criminal organizations in the American Southwest. The murder of Chad Munoz unfolded with a cold, calculated precision that reveals just how far someone will go to gain acceptance in the criminal underworld. Bernal had carefully planned his move, selecting Munoz not just as a target, but as a stepping stone toward his twisted ambition of joining the Mexican Mafia. The question that haunts this case is, how does someone reach a point where taking a life becomes just another item on their to-do list? As investigators would later discover, Bernal didn't just commit the murder. He orchestrated it with a frightening attention to detail. After shooting Munoz in what can only be described as an execution-style killing, he immediately set his plan in motion to cover his tracks. He reached out to his associates, people who would later become witnesses in the case, instructing them to dispose of Munoz's body as if they were simply taking out the trash. What makes this murder particularly disturbing is how it represents a perversion of the human desire for belonging. In most contexts, people might join a sports team or a social club to find acceptance. But in the world of gang culture, the initiation price is often paid in blood. Bernal wasn't just killing Munoz. He was using murder as a job application, a way to prove his worth to an organization that deals in death and violence. The level of planning involved shows this wasn't a spur-of-the-moment decision. Bernal knew exactly what he was doing when he pulled the trigger. He understood that by targeting someone in bad standing with the Mexican Mafia, he would be sending a message, not just about his willingness to kill, but about his understanding of gang politics and hierarchies. It's a chilling reminder of how gang culture can transform murder from a crime into a career move. But the murder of Chad Munoz was just the beginning of Bernal's violent spree. As investigators dug deeper into his activities, they uncovered a connection to another shocking crime: the murder of Austin Mole. What started as a seemingly straightforward gun deal spiraled into yet another deadly encounter, proving that once someone crosses that line into taking a life, the threshold for violence becomes frighteningly low. The details of Mole's murder paint a picture of how quickly situations can escalate in the criminal underworld. What should have been a simple transaction, the buying or selling of a firearm, turned deadly when tensions flared. Unlike the calculated nature of Munoz's murder, this killing spoke to the volatile nature of criminal enterprises, where disagreements are often settled with bullets rather than words. The discovery of Mole's body at the bottom of a canal highlighted the lengths to which Bernal would go to conceal his crimes. It's a grim reminder of how urban waterways, designed to bring life-giving water to our communities, can become dumping grounds for the victims of violence. The canal, silent and dark, had kept its secret until investigators finally pieced together the connection between these two murders. What makes these crimes particularly disturbing is how they showcase different facets of criminal violence. While Munoz's murder was a calculated step toward gang membership, Mole's death emerged from the everyday dangers of illegal gun trades. Together, they paint a portrait of a man who had become completely desensitized to the value of human life, whether killing for advancement or killing over a dispute. The connection between these two murders reveals a pattern of escalating violence. It demonstrates how someone who commits murder for gang acceptance might find it easier to kill again when faced with conflict. In both cases, Bernal showed a complete disregard for human life, treating murder as just another tool in his criminal arsenal. The legal system's response to these heinous crimes was swift and decisive. Timothy Moses Bernal's guilty plea to 2 counts of first-degree murder marked the beginning of the end for his reign of violence. But what makes this case particularly noteworthy is that these murders weren't isolated incidents. They were committed while Bernal was already on probation for a 2015 aggravated assault. Think about that for a moment. A man who had already experienced the consequences of violent behavior, who had been given a chance to reform through probation, chose instead to escalate to murder. Not once, but twice. This pattern of escalating violence speaks volumes about the ineffectiveness of probation in some cases and raises serious questions about how we handle violent offenders. The sentence handed down, 48.75 years in prison, reflects the gravity of Bernal's crimes. It's not just about punishing 2 murders. It's about acknowledging the complete disregard for human life, the violation of probation, and the connection to gang activity. When you break it down, this sentence essentially ensures that Bernal will spend the remainder of his prime years behind bars, likely emerging as an elderly man, if at all. In Arizona's legal system, this sentence sends a clear message about the consequences of gang-related violence. It's worth noting that this wasn't a case that went to trial. Bernal's guilty plea suggests the overwhelming evidence against him. The prosecution, led by Maricopa County Attorney Rachel Mitchell, successfully argued for a sentence that would not only punish these specific crimes, but also serve as a deterrent to others who might consider similar acts of violence. The length of the sentence also acknowledges something crucial about criminal justice: the need to protect society from individuals who have demonstrated both the willingness and capability to kill repeatedly. When someone commits murder while already on probation for a violent offense, it suggests a pattern that's unlikely to be broken without significant intervention. This case represents a significant victory in Phoenix's ongoing battle against gang violence. The successful prosecution and lengthy sentence of Timothy Moses Bernal sends a powerful message that resonates far beyond the walls of the courthouse. As Maricopa attorney Rachel Mitchell emphasized, this case exemplifies their commitment to ridding the streets of gang activity, proving that their gang bureau prosecutors are making real progress in their daily mission. Consider the ripple effects of this conviction. When aspiring gang members witness the consequences, nearly 5 decades behind bars, it serves as a stark reminder that the path to gang membership often leads to one of 2 destinations: the cemetery or a prison cell. This case particularly highlights how the justice system is adapting its approach to gang-related crimes, treating them not as isolated incidents, but as part of a larger pattern that threatens community safety. The significance of this conviction extends beyond just removing one violent offender from the streets. It demonstrates the effectiveness of focused prosecution strategies targeting gang activity. As Mitchell stated, when we imprison those who kill with no regard for human life, we're actively working towards keeping every community safe. This case sets a precedent that could influence how similar cases are handled in the future, potentially deterring others from following Bernal's path. But perhaps most importantly, this case represents a crucial step in dismantling the infrastructure of gang activity in Phoenix. By removing key players and would-be members before they can fully integrate into these criminal organizations, law enforcement and prosecutors are effectively disrupting the cycle of violence that has plagued certain communities. The message is clear: gang violence will not be tolerated, and those who choose this path will face severe consequences. As we close out today's episode, we're left with some haunting questions about the nature of gang violence and its impact on our communities. What drives young people like Timothy Bernal to seek validation through such violent means? How can we as a society intervene before more lives are lost to this endless cycle of gang violence? The case of Timothy Moses Bernal isn't just about one man's crimes. It's a stark reminder of how gang culture continues to claim lives, destroy families, and tear apart communities. Whether it's the murder of a former gang member or a dispute over a gun deal gone wrong, the consequences of these choices echo through generations. Before we wrap up, I want you to consider this. What would it take to prevent the next Timothy Bernal from choosing this path? Could stronger community programs, better support systems, or earlier intervention make a difference? Join the conversation and share your thoughts with us. Stay tuned for our next episode, where we'll explore another gripping case that challenges our understanding of justice and human nature. Until then, this is Sean Dupree, and you've been listening to The Real Crime Diary, Daily Dose of Crime. Remember, the truth is always stranger than fiction. Hey listeners, welcome back to The Real Crime Diary. I'm your host, Sean Dupree. If you tuned in last time, we had a deep dive into the disturbing history of power abuse across different eras, looking at the connection between dominance, control, and how it plays out even today. We touched on scandals from the past and compared them with some modern-day examples, showing how these patterns of abuse, unfortunately, persist. One of the most insightful tools we've explored to understand this is my book, Power, Pleasure, and Pain, a study of abuse through time. It's not just a historical account, but an interdisciplinary approach to understanding why this keeps happening. We draw from history, philosophy, and modern case studies to explain how figures like Dominique Pellico, Harvey Weinstein, and others have exploited their positions of power for their own gain, often protected by the very systems meant to stop them. Recap of last interaction. In our last live stream, we discussed how libertinism, philosophically introduced by figures like Marquis de Sade, has shaped the way power and pleasure have been entangled throughout history. This concept ties directly into how figures like Weinstein operated, as we saw parallels between de Sade's fictional characters and the way powerful men manipulated their victims in real life. You guys had some amazing comments, asking how societal structures have allowed these behaviors to go unchecked for so long. It's a crucial question, and one that the book addresses deeply. Why this book is valuable. Now, what's powerful about Power, Pleasure, and Pain is its ability to break down these historical patterns and link them to the present. You're not just reading about ancient Rome or Enlightenment philosophy, you're seeing how these ideologies are alive today. The book uncovers how sexual violence and control have been systematically woven into the fabric of societies from ancient times right up to the modern era. It's about understanding not just the individual predators, but the systems that protect them, whether it's in royal courts, religious institutions, or today's corporate and entertainment worlds. Through these historical lenses, we also explore movements like #MeToo that are beginning to dismantle these structures. The fight for justice is far from over, but as the book demonstrates, we are in the midst of a cultural shift where legal reforms are finally addressing these long-standing issues. It's more than a history lesson. It's a guide to understanding and supporting change today. What's next? If you want to dive deeper, I suggest picking up Power, Pleasure, and Pain, a study of abuse through time. It's available now, and trust me, it will change the way you think about power, pleasure, and control. We've even got some exclusive content coming up on the channel where we'll be exploring the book's case studies in even more detail, so stay tuned for that. And if you haven't yet, make sure you subscribe to The Real Crime Diary so you don't miss any updates. Let's keep this conversation going, because understanding the past is key to changing the future.